Ohio football made history in '60. The Ohio Bobcats in 1960 went undefeated, 10-0. They outscored the opposition 269 to 34. 269 to 34. There were 5 shutouts. They were ranked 7 weeks during that season, and that undefeated campaign ended with the College Division National Championship. I'm Russ Eisenstein, the voice of the Ohio Bobcats, joined by Ken Winstead, the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Development at Ohio University. And Ken, this is a story that needs to be told, retold, and told again. Motivational, certainly, for those that are playing now, and memories that will never be forgotten for so many Cats, huh?
Absolutely. It's a thrill to introduce 2 Bobcat legends to our interview here, and as you said, teammates on the '60 Bobcat National Championship team. I'll start with Bucky Wagner. Per Bobcat legend Coach Bob Kappas, who I talked to today, his quote about Bucky was a fine QB, but didn't start out as such, but through hard work and determination earned the starting QB spot on a very talented football team and was one of our mainstays. You know, Bucky remained in Athens after graduating and served as an assistant coach under Bill Hess through the remainder of the '60s, including the '68 MAC championship team. Bucky was a tremendous recruiter and coach. He later moved into athletic administration, highlighted by a long tenure at Georgia Southern, where he oversaw the resurgence of its football program in the early '80s after not playing for many decades. Within 3 seasons, they won the first of multiple national titles at the Division I AA level, and is now, Georgia Southern's now an upper tier program in the Sun Belt Conference in Division I know a little bit about this as he hired me right out of Ohio U to help him with his fundraising. At least I tried to help him. Next is Dick Gretney. Per Coach Kappas, quote, Bill Hess said on many occasions, Dick Gretney was simply the best football player I ever coached. Quote, was nice. Coach Kappas said he was the nicest player off the field, but on the field would knock your rear end off. I think Bucky could probably attest to that. Among Dick's many accomplishments were the following: 59 team MVP, 59 and 60 all-conference first team, 1960 co-captain, and 59 and 60 was a major college honorable mention All-American, which is huge. He was later drafted by the Cleveland Browns and also played for the Minnesota Vikings. And one thing to mention, and I'll bring it back to you, Russ, but one thing that needs mentioning with these two, both these gentlemen were walk-ons. And the other guys on the team, many were recruited, but these 2 were walk-ons. And Russ, it's an honor to be with these great legends and tremendous people. It's going to be a fun interview.
So, gentlemen, let's start at the start. Bill Hess was in his 3rd season as head coach at Ohio University. And I would imagine that there was a nice build-up to this campaign. What were your thoughts going into this season? Did you think that you could be as good as you were? Bucky, let's start with you.
I don't think there's any doubt that we knew we were going to be something special. Bowling Green just beat us on a freak play. That loss, Miami just really beat the stew out of us down there on a big old rainy, nasty day. But those were only 2 losses. And we wanted to get that Miami because Miami had beaten us 18 straight years up to that point. Bowling Green, when we played them, had won 18 straight consecutive games. But there was an air about the fact that we knew we were going to be pretty good. And we were kind of looking for a fight call, something that we could rally behind, to kind of pull us together. And we had a good senior class. We had a big senior class. And we had a guy on the team named Moose Massarelli. And Moose was a icon on campus. He was the greatest lover and the greatest carouser. But Moose, they would send us our shoes to break in the summer before we came back. And Moose spent the summer on Cape Cod, and he came back and his shoes weren't even out of box yet. So he hadn't worked out all summer. But he got into a term called Hunja. I don't know where the hell Hunja came from. Hunja. And we started kind of kicking it around. George Ballou and Moose and Joe Dean, Hunja this, Hunja that. And it kind of grew as the season went on. And it culminated in the Bowling Green game. We're playing Bowling Green, and Bowling Green was very much of a power football team. And George Ballou was a small size end. He was about 185 or 195. And Ted Studi was about 215, and both of them were on the same side. So Bowling Green decided they were just going to pound George and Ted. I mean, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row, run the same play. It was just two guys lead it, back guy guard leads it, and everybody just piling buttholes over George and Ted. Well, sometime in the middle of the second quarter, they get a drive and go down and score, and then we come back, and they run over Ted and George, and Ted comes up out of the bottom of the pile. His tears are in his eyes. He's praying. He says, Hunter. You know, and it just picked everybody up, and and then from then on, everything was Hunter. And after the game, everybody's in the locker room going, Hunter. And to this day, if we write a letter or we call one of our team members, we all ended up with Hunter.
Somewhat foreshadowing into
one of
your
those things, morale-wise, kind of, help pull us together. But what a Hunter, I don't know what it means.
foreshadowing into your administrative career at Georgia Southern and mottos that help fire up ball clubs, to be sure. Dick,
Right.
let's go to you. Your thoughts leading into this season. Did you think you'd be pretty good?
Well, going back to my first 1958, we were 5-4. The next year, of course, we were 7-2. But that year, we felt so good about ourselves. And then we lost those 2 games. Miami just really beat our butts badly. We should have won the Bowling Green game. For one play, we lost the game. But so we felt so good about ourselves. And that year going into the next season, I think all of us in the summertime really practiced harder, worked harder. I put on another 12 pounds. We were ready for that year. I think we really felt that we were the best team and nobody could beat us. And that was my feeling. And I believe that was the feeling of the entire team. And that's how we practiced. We practiced harder. We worked harder. When we played our first game, we didn't just trot out on the field. We ran out on the field. I was the leader. I ran out. Everybody else ran out with me. And we did that every game. We just felt so strong about ourselves and that nobody was going to beat us. There was just no way. And it showed. And that's what happened in that year.
The numbers speak for themselves, but need a little bit of coloring in. 269-34 is what you outscored the opposition. That's something that is absolutely unheard of. That means just sheer dominance on all sides of the ball. Why was your offense and defense that dominant that season?
Well, Bucky really can talk about the offense. I'll talk about the defense. One of the most proud things I have about OU and football is that the most points scored against us was only 8. There were 5 touchdowns, but the most points was only 8 in one game. And we had 5 games that they had 0. And I'm most proud of that. And actually, the first team really only had 2 scores against us. And the one score was in the Toledo game, the very first game. We were in there for most of the game before halftime. And then they took us out. Back then, the substitution was different. The whole team substitutes. So they brought in the other team. And then within a few minutes, just before halftime, Toledo got all the way down to like the 10-yard line. Coach put us back in, and we just couldn't stop them. We were tired. It was hot, and so they scored that touchdown. The only other touchdown was Bowling Green, and they scored once. And that's one of my greatest feelings about what we were so good. It was just, we were that good. We could read plays. We studied film, I think, more than anybody else, because it showed. Joe Dean and I and a number of other ball players would watch films over and over and over again, looking for clues, being able to read the guards and the center and even the quarterback. We were that good at it. And we couldn't wait to play a game because we knew we could beat them. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful feeling. Offensively, it was a pleasure. We had a great backfield. We had a great quarterback. Bucky was a great leader. We needed someone like him, and we had him. He was the best thing that we could have ever had as far as a quarterback. He was our leader on offense. And then we had, of course, Bobby Brooks. We had Bobby Harrison. We had Clyde Thomas. We had John Dickinson. These guys were good, really good. It was a pleasure to watch them. We would watch the films later, and it was so much fun to watch those guys play. They were good. And of course, our offensive line was just wonderful. They studied the films too, and they knew how to block well, and they did. But thanks to Bucky, he was our leader, our captain on that football field. Thank you, Bucky.
Thank you. I think people, because our defense was just sound. It was sound our junior year, it was sound our senior year, and we just kind of walked up on a line and whipped people. But our offensive backfield was something special. Bobby Harrison, Clyde Thomas, anytime they're off, they're going 80 yards. Bob Brooks, same way. Dickinson, just a good, big, steady runner. And just any minute. And Clyde Thomas was such a good receiver. George Ballou was such a good receiver. George Ballou never dropped the pass I threw to him. And it was a bad pass drill, but usually we didn't pass it that much. So when I'd fake the ball to Brooks, everybody was tackling Brooks, and George was down there in the end zone waving his arms. But Bobby Harrison, you think about Kent State, about the second play, he breaks one off for about 60 yards. Clyde Thomas was always breaking something off. And Brooks was good, 60-30. We just had some really good backs. Here was my problem. I stood behind an All-American center, took the ball from them, and handed it to an All-American fullback. That's all I did. My biggest challenge was getting everybody off on the count. We led the country in least number of penalties by far. You look at that Bowling Green game, we had no penalties. We never jumped off sides. We were very conservative, and we were disciplined. But that was my biggest test, get everybody off on the snap. And Joe Dean would always start leaning. If I got in a long counter, I think Joe Dean would start leaning. I'd have to call it quick before he fell on his nose.
Well, it starts at the snap, to be sure. And you were ranked after a win in week 3 over 13th ranked Kent State. What do you remember about that game, and what was it like to see Ohio football being ranked as high as you were? And you didn't drop out of the polls, obviously. Again, you won the national championship from that point. What do you remember about that week against KSU?
When I remember Bobby Harrison about the second play, I think we kicked him, stopped him, took the ball about the second play. He went 60 yards down the sideline, and he could prance. I mean, he got out ahead of him, he put on a show. He could run. He was a great trackster. He went and played with the Baltimore Colts for several years. Brooks went and played for the Titans. Clyde Thomas played on several smaller pro teams. But I remember that, and we beat him pretty good. We hit some pretty good passes. I think George Blue caught one, and Harrison caught one, and we pretty well dominated the game. Uh, the all the ranking and things, you know, it was kind of like everything was new to us. You know, you remember in Greg, you remember Bowling Green our junior year, they put bleachers in the end zone. Now, Peyton Stadium had never had bleachers in the end zone. They brought in temporary bleachers because we had an overflow crowd for the Bowling Green game. We started out, we were playing before half a house. Now we're playing before an overflow house. So all that stuff was new, and it was exciting. It was a trip.
Speaking of the crowds, Peden at that time was 11 or 12,000. Those were the crowds that you had, and it was probably higher than that because the fire marshal probably would have gotten a little upset if the numbers were a little higher than the actual max capacity. Dick, the ranking, when you saw that you were ranked after the Kent State win, what was that like for you?
Interesting. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that we were ranked. I didn't pay any attention to that. It didn't mean anything to me. So I can't answer the question.
It's kind of like this. When we got past Miami, you know, Bowling Green was ranked number 1. And we're looking at Bowling Green. And it was all just Bowling Green and us going down to the end. But and the Miami was a sweet victory. We beat them soundly, and they had a bunch of loudmouths that I really enjoyed beating.
21-0 was the final of that ball game. That was in week 6. That was at home. That ended an 18-year drought against the Redskins at that time. Was it pandemonium? Was it euphoria? What was the emotion like for your ball club after finally getting the better of your rival?
I know that the coaches enjoyed that one better than anybody because they lived with that Miami hanging over them for a long time. And I know that they were just pleased. The administration was just so pleased, and Bill Rohr would, when he became the athletic director, would give an award away to any team that beat Miami. So if you got Miami, you got a pin or you got something that said we beat Miami, or it was something with a little bit of class. But it was a homecoming. You know, it was a great day. You know, we won. Everybody went home and hugged their girlfriends and went to the dance. So it was good.
Dick, your memories of that Miami game?
Well, first of all, they also celebrated our president leaving, Mr. Baker. They celebrated Les Carney. They celebrated him because he was the only person from Ohio University ever to run the Olympics.
Right.
And Peden, they named the stadium after him. So there were 3 celebrations. We had to win the game. And it was exciting, of course. A friend of mine, the year before, Miami just beat us badly, and a gentleman by the name of Billy Miller, who he and I went to high school with. And after the game, I asked, we were talking, and he says, you know, Johnny Pont said that before the game that these guys are one of the best teams you're going to play, and because of their strength, we're going to beat them because of their strength. And he said, we watched the movies, and he watched myself, Kenny Fisher, and Joe Dean, how we pulled according to their guards. Wherever their guards went, we went. And he says, and Johnny Pond said, these guys are good, watch them. He says, because of that, that's how we're going to beat them. He says, so what they did was they would pull the guards, and they would go ahead and have the halfback, Billy Miller, of course, get tackled a few times because he would pull over. Then what they would do is they pull the guards, and Billy would come up the line and then veer across the line. Nobody was there because we were all to the right. He went the other direction, and vice versa. They would pull this way, and he would go the other direction. And they did that constantly during the game. And then from time to time, and they would run it straight. Well, because they would run it straight, we think that they're going to pull, so we were always out of position. Billy had over 100 yards that game. He was a hero. And it was all because of of their coaching and watching us. Well, that didn't happen the following year. We were ready for them the following year. And it was a pleasure. Probably my biggest thrill was beating Miami and knowing it was, 18 years for Ohio University ever to beat them. So that was a real thrill. And I believe they carried Bill Hess off the field with the Miami banner wrapped around him.
Yeah.
On the shoulders of some of the ball players. Remember that, Bucky?
I remember that. I remember that vividly. I forgot about it. I can still see it. We had him up on our shoulders too.
Yeah, on the shoulders.
So
dear.
The number 18 was important here, gentlemen, because you ended that 18-year drought against Miami. Bowling Green had an 18-game winning streak going into your game against them. They were college division national champions the year prior. And to further add to this, there are a number of schools in the MAC, well, not a huge number, but there are several that won college division national titles. BG, Ohio, Northern Illinois, and Central Michigan won one in 1974. So there's some history here in the Division II college division. 18-game win streak for Bowling Green. You go in to Dwight Perry and you win 14-7. What was that like to go there to continue your season of success and to end their long string of success?
That was just that was as emotional a football game as I've ever played in. I was before the game. Bill Hess and I we sometimes didn't get on the same page together, and he used to like just beating up on me. But before the game, I'm in the locker room in the John, and I've got the dry heaves I'm throwing up for the pressure. The next thing I know, Bill Hess has got his arm around me. He says, "Settle down, son, settle down." Next thing I know, he and I are both there throwing up before the game, arm in arm. And I think that's when we became buddies. But I remember just being as tight as I could be. Starting that ball game, my legs felt like they were weighed a ton. And we ran a sweep. They had an all Mid-American Conference linebacker, really good player. And I would kind of lead the sweep, with Brooks in the backside guard. And I'd turn up the field, check the linebacker, then I'd go down on the corner. Well, this linebacker was coming up. About the time he getting close to me, the guy gets tackled behind me and the wind blow the whistle. And I slow up. He doesn't slow up. He just knocks the dog out of me. I got blood in my face. But it woke me up. Now I'm ready to play. Because it just got all that stuff out of you. But one of the things I realized about the middle of the second quarter, I'm looking around and said, hell, our coaches are more nervous than we are. They're doing some things I wonder, what the hell are you doing, doing that for? Big Daddy at halftime, he comes up to me and he grabs me and says, "Bucky, you take it this half. You call it. You run it." I'm like, I don't believe in this. but I'll do it. But I just realized they were more nervous than we were. We were out there where we could hit some people and so forth. But Bowling Green was a good football team, sound football team. They didn't make any mistakes. We didn't make any mistakes that day, and we got one touchdown more than they did. But if we'd played 10 times, we'd have beat them 10 times, right, Greg?
There was no way they were going to beat us.
Nope.
I was not nervous. I was so excited. I couldn't wait for that game to start.
Yep.
When we left the locker room to run on the field, I ran as fast as my legs would carry me. I couldn't wait for that game to start. I was so excited. And of course, back then we played both ways. And it was a thrill and exciting because I couldn't wait to hit somebody. And when I blocked somebody, I blocked them and blocked them and blocked them until they were on the ground. I was on top of them. I did that consistently as much as I could. And the same thing with the defense. I was trying to hit everybody I possibly could hit and get out of my way because I'm coming after you. And Joe Dean was exactly the same way.
Yep.
Of course, Joe Dean was like Bucky. He was throwing up too. He was thrown up on the football field. He was excited. He was nervous but excited. But it was a thrill to play that game, and we were looking forward to it so much. And to know that who they were, we knew who they were. We knew that they had won 18 games, and they weren't going to win 19. And Bucky did one heck of a job. Bucky was great in that game. He deserved every accolade he could have given him. He was that good. He was our leader that game.
There was an elephant in the room with me that day. You know how we lost the ball game the year before? When that interception run back for a touchdown. I didn't throw it, but all I could think about is, holy, don't let that happen to me. And the first time we rolled out, I threw the ball to George Ballou on 94 up 37. And he's there with the receiver, with the defender, and he comes down with the ball. I said, Lord Herschel, if that guy would have caught that ball and George wouldn't have caught it, I'd probably run out of the back of the stadium, never come back.
So it was a different sort of game than you had throughout the rest of the year. Obviously, it was a 14-7 decision, and that was week 9. Dick, you had mentioned that you didn't pay much mind to the fact that you were ranked. As the season started to go along there, obviously no social media at the time, but the newspapers certainly had to keep count of where the rankings were. When it came to that game afterwards and figuring, well, maybe, you could be national champs here. Did that ever cross your mind at that time of, wow, this is really exciting. We might be national champs?
Never thought about it. Never crossed my mind. The only thing that was on my mind was win the football game. I just thought about that day, that game, and that's how I felt through the entire season, really. I never thought about, those things just I didn't think about those things. They weren't on my mind. It was just, I wanted to play that next football game, get yourself prepared for it. Find out who you're going to be playing against individually, watching the videos, watching the film. But things in the paper, I never thought about them. It didn't bother me. I didn't think about them. It wasn't important to me.
Bucky, was it important to you?
Well, I think the culture at that time wasn't like the culture is today, where you get so much blasting on who's number one, who's the top 10. We didn't, the bigger schools, they weren't doing that. And so you weren't get pumped with who's number one, who's number 3, where you ranked, like you do today. So in that regard, we were just beating Bowling Green, and hell, we didn't know what winning the national championship was. We just one game at a time, and we did it. And it sure was neat after it was over.
Full disclosure, I'm a Southern Illinois University Carbondale alum. Final week of that campaign, final score, Ohio 48, SIU 6. And the undefeated season actually occurred. So my Salukis didn't do much to you guys on that day. You guys did everything to the Dogs. What do you remember about week 10 against the Maroon and White of SIU?
I can tell them about that last drive.
Let me lead up to that first.
Okay.
They had a defensive tackle named Houston Antwine. Antwine was all pro for the Patriots for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
The first play of the game, we were in a sweep to his side. Ted Studi's blocking him. Ted Studi falls into me. I fall into Dickinson, the ball carrier. Dickinson looks at me and said, "What the hell are you doing back here?" And Houston Antwine had knocked Ted into me, and I fell into John. Ted comes back, and you probably remember that Ted comes back to the huddle, and he's mumbling. And you had that iron face mask. Houston Antwine had collapsed it right to his face. It just bit it, and he's kind of looking at this, go, ooh. So we ran the other way the rest of the game. But we get in about an 8 minute to go, 5 minutes to go in the game. We score. We're kicking off. It's like 42-6. And so Big Daddy puts all the seniors in the kickoff team. And that thing, Salukis got this kick returner that goes and plays with the Giants for several years. He's a great kick returner. So we kick off to him. He runs it back to our 5-yard line. so they almost ran it back for a touchdown. We get him stop him on the 5, and then we start back up the field. All the seniors on the field, and it's kind of like that's our Hunja drive. You know, we go in the line, Hunja, you know. And I'll never forget Ted Studi. About the second play on that drive, we ran the fullback back to his side, and he double teamed Houston Antoine, and Brooks got about 14 yards. He come back to that huddle. He was all puffed up and just running again. I could handle him. Houston Antoine was an animal, man. But we went all the way down the field. That was kind of the last drive. That was our Hunja drive, and that was just great memories. Great times.
Hunja through 10-0 and a real capper to the season with that 42-point victory. Conference champions, and at that time, that was prior to 2 polls. So United Press International was the main poll, the only poll for the college division at that time. The AP and UPI would exist with polls for years. Then the UPI would dissolve, and the AP would be the poll. So you were UPI national champions with the 10-0 and conference championship season. When you were told, to bring this back around full circle, Dick, when you were told that you were national champions then, you obviously didn't pay attention to it throughout the course of the year. So what was your excitement level of knowing that you were a national champion at the end?
Oh, that makes a difference. Now the season's over. You start reading the paper. Absolutely. I've got my ring now. It says Ohio University national champions. Still got it. Still wear it.
Yeah, I still got mine.
Yes,
too.
it was. Now it becomes exciting.
Yeah.
And started hearing from my friends and from my fraternity brothers and my relatives, and it's in the paper all over the place. And you start puffing up. Wow, yeah, you know what? We really are. We're national champs. What a great feeling that was. Absolutely. It was a wonderful, wonderful feeling. Yes.
Bucky, your thoughts on being national champs?
It's just icing on the cake. You know, it was just like you hadn't thought about that at the beginning of the season. We're just trying to beat Bowling Green and win the Mid-American Conference. And all of a sudden, here we are. And there was the theme from Exodus. You ever hear the theme from Exodus? It starts out slow and then it builds up. Well, that was big right at that time. And I always take the theme from Exodus and put it with that season to build up and the crescendos at the end. So, those are great memories. Sitting in Gemini's listening to the theme from Exodus with the national championship ring on.
You're a composer and a composer cat, to be sure. And I'll bring Ken Winstead back into the conversation here. We talked about this prior to the interview, Ken. There was a real camaraderie amongst all of these teams at Ohio University at that time. There was a great sense of unity amongst all of the teams. And prior to asking our 2 stars about it, that's the type of spirit that I think would be wonderful to be replicated and emulated now and in the future.
Well, we are going to replicate it. That's our goal over the next 3 to 4 years, is to bring back the MAC All Sports Trophy to Ohio University and knock Miami off their pedestal. But there was, if you look at the 60s, actually Bucky was there the entire 60s, so he knows this, and Dick does too. The All Sports Trophy was awarded to Ohio University 7 times of the 10 years, and we were really right there could have won it all 10. And so I just am amazed and love to hear these guys' opinions on what it was like to be a Bobcat then and how they felt about the other teams and other athletes. Because I think there was a camaraderie that we could emulate and needs to be emulated by really every program. So I'd love to hear what it was like then, because we haven't won the All Sports Trophy in a while. We've come close some years, but we want everyone to come out of this pandemic, all of our student athletes and our coaches and our donors to team together to team together and win the All MAC trophy. And you know, we want to get back to where these guys, these legends had it. And they weren't just legends in football. There were legends in other sports that I'll let them take the mic and explain.
Bucky, let's start with you on that. The camaraderie amongst everyone within the athletic department and all student athletes at that time. How did that occur? And what was it like to be that gelled with everybody else across the rest of the department?
Well, the department wasn't that big. We had three studs. We had Bill Hess, Jim Snyder, and Bob Wren. They were really good people. They worked really well together. There was, I mean, everybody goes to basketball games and baseball games. We ran with those guys. We had a varsity O club. We were just one unit, and the morale is the most important single factor in winning. You can take anything else, money, you know, you've got people with a lot of money, they don't win. You got people with a lot of facilities, they don't win. But it's not what you have, it's what you feel about what you have. And if you look during those years, not only did the big three, football, baseball, basketball, successful, but golly, you know, Kermit Blosser's winning in golf every year. Fletcher, the swimming team was awesome. You know, the swimming team was really good. And then Harry Huska came in and became the wrestling coach, and they started dominating there. Stan Huntsman, Stan Huntsman's one of the top track coaches in America. He goes and becomes a head track coach at the University of Texas. He's an Olympic coach. And I mean, he was our track coach. We just had some good people, not a lot of people. Now, if you look, we were single platoon football, so we had a squad of 50 people. We'd go to Miami to a game in one bus, you know, and so we didn't have money. You didn't really care about the money. You got a chance to play, you got a chance to be with your buddies, and you got a chance to help other people. And if you're not playing because you like to play, and if you're not there to help be positive, well, you got to run from negative people. Just be positive about things, the morale, and know that the morale, how that guy's feeling about you, how we're feeling about the team, and how we can help one another. That's what it's all about. That's what life's all about. You know, so we talk about, you know, coaches talk about, I need this money, I need that, I can't win because that guy's got, no, you got a kid, you let him know you care about him, you work with him, you develop him, and he has good morale, and you have good morale, and good things happen. And then whether you got a $100 uniform or $10 uniform, whether you're riding in a bus or flying in a plane, you know, it doesn't make any difference.
Dick, do you feel that camaraderie and that sense of community and that sense of friendship, did that help you as a student, as an athlete?
Absolutely, without question. The camaraderie is something that happened over a period of time. By the time we were seniors, we were so close, we knew each other so well, we believed in each other. But the big thing is we had great respect for each other. And I think that was one of the key elements, that we believed in each other, and we just believed that the guy next to me is a great athlete, and they feel the same way about you, and it just transpired throughout our entire team, and that we believed in each other. We had great respect for each other, but also the coaches. We had great respect for the coaches. We had great respect for the university, and we had this respect, I think, carried over into the other teams, and we admired them. We went to all the basketball games, we went to all the baseball games, as they went to the football games. And we got closer and closer with them. A lot of us worked together. Back then we had to work a job, and that was part of our scholarship. And I worked with some of the basketball players and the baseball players, and you got to know them personally. And that just grew and grew and grew. And it was a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
So it is the 60th anniversary of what happened in 1960. What you accomplished in 1960. Does it feel like it was 60 years ago, or are as we've heard, the memories are incredibly vivid, and I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours more. But does it feel like it's been 60 years for you?
80 years. No, no, not really, because the memories are so close to us. Some of the memories are so great and so vivid, they don't go away. And because they're there, and we still talk with them. We talk with them to our children. We talk about them to our grandchildren. We have scrapbooks, and those come up from time to time. And so they're there. And it's a wonderful feeling. And again, it was an honor. First of all, it was an honor to go to Ohio University. It was an honor to play football, especially for Bill Hess. And those feelings never go away, and they're always there. And besides that, we mentioned the coaches. Bucky will know this. We had great respect for the coaches' wives, and the wives were part of the team. We had Elsa, Heffelfinger's wife, and we had Frank Rich's wife, Ruth, and Bob Campus's wife, Joe, and of course, Katie Hess. And she was an absolute love. And these people loved us, and they showed it. And they were at all the games, all the functions. They'd come up and hug you and kiss you, and we just knew that they were part of the team. It was a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And I used to think, well, maybe I was special because of all this. When she'd look at your eyes and she'd talk with you right square in the eyes, I found out that that's how she was to all the players. That was how Katie was. She loved all of us. She had this great respect for all of us. That really was a wonderful feeling too.
Bucky, does it feel like 60 years ago?
I believe in the principle that how old would you be if you didn't know when you were born? Years just go, but we still, I still get together with the guys. I call Dickinson and George Ballou and Titsudi and Otis, and we get together. Last year, we all got together up in Wisconsin, about 8 of us. We still stay close. We still keep in touch with everybody, and that's special after 50 years. I told you the story coming in that I had a friend and I hadn't seen him 50 years. How are you? Lived in a dorm with me. We were good friends, and I called him. I run him down and found him. I called him. I said, "You sitting down?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "This is Bucky Wagner." First thing out of his mouth, "Best years of my life." Best years of my life, 50 years. That's the first thing out of his mouth.
Well, it certainly is something to remember, to be sure, be proud of, to be sure. I'd like to...
Russ, I just want to add that they weren't just the best years of your lives, you guys. They were the best years for Ohio University athletics. It was a decade that our goal is to emulate. So thank you guys for setting the tone and giving us the whole talk about morale and how excited you were to play in that Bowling Green game. There was a drive you guys had that and all the other teams had it. That's why you won the MAC trophy every year. And we're going to get back to that. So I want to thank you, and we're going to do you guys proud.
Gentlemen, I'd like to, while we have the opportunity here, and I echo Ken's comments, there might be some student athletes, not just football, but across our department that are watching this and would love to get some words of wisdom from you, some motivation from you. if you had the opportunity for student athletes that are watching this, heck, even fans that are watching this, what would you tell them about your experience and your memories of Ohio University that have impacted you now that can impact them in the future too? Dick, let's start with you.
Okay, I'm going to go back to 1956. I was visiting before I decided what college I was going to go to. I visited other colleges. I went to Kent State, went to Akron U, I went to Toledo, and Miami of Ohio. Three of the schools, not Miami, but the other three, as I'm walking around campus, I didn't see anything that was exciting. I just saw students carrying books, saw some people holding hands, but nothing different. When I went to Miami of Ohio, there was a little difference. And what I picked up was they were, to me, sophisticated, a little snobbish. And that didn't do it. That turned me off. Because we talked with people too on all the campuses. And then we went to my last stop, went to Ohio University, totally different. Wow. I stood on the corner and watched what was going on, and it was exciting. And the people were different, and they'd come over and talk with us. But they knew we were from high school yet, and we started talking. But there was this conversation, and there was this friendship, and the campus is beautiful. But the people were different, and they were friendly and kind and warm. And what a feeling it gave me. And at that point, I said, I've got to go here. There's no choice. My brother-in-law tried to talk me into going to Miami, but there's just no way. I have to go to Ohio University because there was that great feeling. Well, when I went there, that's exactly how it was. I love the dormitory life. I love the people there, and to be talking with people. I had in our corner of our room, a section, we had a gentleman from Tehran, Iran. We had somebody from South Korea. We had Jewish people. We had Catholic people. We had different religions, and we could talk. And what a great feeling. And no one got down on anybody else or told them what to do. It was just, everybody wants to learning more about somebody else's background and someone else's culture. And that's how I felt the entire time I went to OU. I learned more by just being there than I did in the books. And that was my education. And that's how I feel about selecting a school. You have to love it. And again, I know Bucky's the same way, but I love Ohio University. I have relatives, cousins, relatives, grandchildren who've gone to other schools, but nobody talks about their school like I talk about Ohio University.
Bucky, your words of wisdom to Bobcats of now and Bobcats of the future.
Your 4 years in college are such growth times. You can't miss it. And the friendships that you develop there are going to be lasting friendships for your life. Those people are going to be another set. You had your high school graduating class, which was special. Now you're going off and you're meeting new people, and you're experiencing new things, and you're learning different things, and you're expanding. I came from a little town, a little farm town, and I was just naive as anybody coming to campus. Everything was just brand new to me. And there's so many things that if I'd have known what was really going on there, I could have captured, and I could have enriched the experience. So just know that this is a growth time. This is a time when you're molding you, and you're learning to meet friends, and you're learning to get along with different types of people, and you're hopefully gaining some knowledge for your career or your lifestyle. But and the biggest thing is the fact that this is all about people. You know, when you go to college, it's about people. When it was high school, it's about people. It's about that friend. It's about doing what you can to make things a little bit easier for the other guy. And just and being helpful. And those things all crescendo on you, and those things all build up, and they build up, and they build up. And it's just a good feeling to know that you can do that and help other people. But you get a chance in college now, and it's an exciting time because you're in such a growth time in your life and molding yourself. And I wouldn't take anything from my Ohio U days. They were wonderful. The coaches we had were just great mentors and leaders, and we just had a good situation.
Ken, two special people right here, I would say, and certainly two of many to remember and to congratulate, and certainly will motivate going forward, wouldn't you say?
Two great people and two of the best Bobcats ever.
Bucky Wagner, Dick
Okay.
Gretney, thank you so much for the time. Enjoy the memories. Congratulations again on all that you accomplished. You certainly are Bobcat national champions.